Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Just like cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer-mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical, Russ Belville.
Right on. Welcome back, everybody. Time for Toker Talk Radio, coming to you live from South Carolina. My 3-day stint here in the Palmetto State. Coming to an end tonight. We're making our way to Atlanta, Georgia tomorrow morning. We've got the Unity Cypher that's made its way all the way from Portland, Maine. And I'll be taking it from South Carolina to Georgia, where it will tour around Atlanta. As I mentioned, I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia tomorrow and Saturday, but I'll be doing the public events tomorrow, spending time with friends on Saturday. But the public events tomorrow, Friday, April 29th, 12:30 to 1 o'clock at the Capitol and Liberty Park. We'll be taking photos. 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock at Centennial Olympic Park near the water play fountains. 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. And, of course, we'll be lighting the torch at 4:20 p.m. Then from 6 to 7:30, I'll be appearing at the Pot Shop at 1166 Euclid Avenue in Little Five Points, and that's where I'll be doing my show tomorrow. So we'll get there early and set up all the internet and the power and all that stuff, and we'll do a live show from Little Five Points. That ought to be fun. I understand that Little Five Points is the hippie capital of the Southeast, so looking forward to that. And then tomorrow, or I should say Saturday, April 30th, the torch goes from Atlanta to Jacksonville, Florida. We'll be flown down there by Georgia chapter leader and pilot Rick Raines. And then it'll be in Jacksonville. It'll make its way down through Florida. On Sunday, will be flying to Miami, Florida, and then eventually the torch will make its way to me. So we'll get that all figured out next week. I don't exactly have the details for that. Also, I wanted to make a quick shout out to Denise Dory. I've been in this Twitter argument with this woman named Denise Dory, also hitting me up on Facebook. She's one of these stoners against legalization who say that the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, the California Sean Parker Initiative, whatever you want to call it, is the end of Prop 215. It's the end of medical marijuana. If patients can't grow 99 plants for one another, then it's not true legalization. And she says we ought to reject the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. I guess just leave prohibition as it is. So I wanted to just go straight to the source because you know me, folks, I look shit up. And this is from the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, Section 11362.45. Nothing in Section 11362.1, which is the personal possession and cultivation section, which is the part that limits recreational cultivation to 6 plants indoors. Nothing in Section 11362.1 shall be construed to or interpreted to amend, repeal, affect, restrict, or preempt. Then it lists a bunch of shit, right? Can't drink and drive, or you can't smoke and drive a boat or a car or whatever. Can't give away marijuana to people under 21. You can't have them in the pot shops. You can't use it in a prison. You can't have professional negligence or malpractice because you're smoking pot. You can still have drug-free workplaces. State or local government can restrict the actions otherwise permitted within a building of the state or local government. Individuals with private entities can restrict it in their own private property. And then we get down to letter I. Letter I, remember, nothing in section 11362.1 shall be construed or interpreted to amend, repeal, affect, restrict, or preempt laws pertaining to the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, a.k.a. Prop 215, a.k.a. medical marijuana. There's a section right there, Denise. 11362.45. Look it up. Medical marijuana is unaffected by the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. Period. All right, when we come back, we got that Chicago corrupt cop story.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Seed to sale, clicks to conversions, and more. You're listening to the Cannabis Radio Network.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Tommy Chong Show on Cannabis Radio. You know, about this podcast, what I really want to do from now on is to solve world problems. I feel like my job is to calm everybody down and focus on how we can save this planet.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
Get the latest updates on the Russ Belville Show by following Radical Russ on Twitter and liking the Russ Belville Show on Facebook.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Remember, friends, there's more to life than marijuana. I just can't remember what it is. Why'd I come in here? You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Amazing story in StopTheDrugWar.org. Clarence Walker has written this up. Chicago narcs busted lying through their teeth in marijuana case. Basically, this happened back in 2013, June 6, 2013. 3 Chicago narcs and a couple of Glenview police officers, a suburb of Chicago, pulled over a man named Joseph Sperling. Pretext stop, one of those, hey, you didn't use your turn signal. Right, sure. And then claimed that Sperling, the guy pulled over, told them there was drugs in the vehicle. The cops then said they found marijuana in plain view and arrested him on possession and distribution charges. But when it came time to go to court, things went south for the cops. The prosecutors had been questioning one of these Chicago PD narcotics officers named William Pruente, who said in sworn testimony that when police pulled over Sperling, they immediately smelled marijuana and ordered him to exit the vehicle and stand at the rear of the car. The defense attorney asked the cop if Sperling was handcuffed after he got out of the car. No, he wasn't handcuffed. The cop said he was not under arrest at the time. The other narcs, Sergeant James Pater and Vince Morgan, and the two suburban cops, James Horn and Teresa Urbanowski, backed up his story. Said no, he wasn't handcuffed. He was not under arrest. Then, as Teresa Urbanowski was testifying, the defense attorney dropped a bombshell. He interrupted the testimony to inform Judge Catherine Haberkorn that he needed to offer a videotape into evidence. The evidence revealed the video came from Urbanowski's police cruiser and flatly contradicted the sworn testimony of the police officers. The cops had been lying to the court and to the judge, and the video would prove it. So, defense attorney took Teresa Urbanowski back over the events. She's one of the suburban cops, played the recording, and asked her to describe the difference between her original testimony and what was happening on the tape. The footage contradicted the testimony of the police officers. Prente had testified that Sperling had not been arrested or handcuffed until the cops had found the dope in plain view. But the video showed the cop walking up to his car, reaching in the open window, unlocking the door, pulling him out, handcuffing him, placing him on the backseat of a patrol car, and then the cops went to search the car. So they just pulled him right out, handcuffed him immediately, then searched the car. Video clearly showed the officer spending minutes thoroughly searching his car before finding weed and a small amount of mushrooms in a black duffel bag. The defense attorney noted if the drugs had really been in plain view on the front seat of the vehicle, the officers had no reason to search it because they already had the drugs. So that lie was caught. The difference between the officer's testimony and what the video revealed infuriated the judge, who immediately granted the motion to suppress, because the video showed they had no probable cause to arrest him. Remember, he's pulled over for a turn signal. No probable cause for the arrest, and no warrant to search the vehicle. No reason to search the vehicle. The judge said from the bench, quote, "This is very outrageous conduct. All the officers lied on the stand today. All their testimony is a lie. There is strong evidence it was a conspiracy to lie in this case for everyone to come up with the same lie." And so the judge dismissed the criminal charges against Joseph Sperling, who was 23 at the time. The Cook County criminal justice system was then sued. He filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the illegal search and seizure against the Chicago and Glenview police departments. The two cities settled the suit and paid him $195,000 for his troubles. Which is nice, but here's what I always have a problem with when I get to this part of the story. I'm happy as hell that Joseph Sperling got almost $200,000 for having his civil rights violated. I'm not happy as hell that the taxpayers of Cook County, Illinois, are on the hook for it and not the cops themselves. See, these cops, they have pretty damn good pay. They got pretty damn good benefits, and they got a really nice pension plan. You want to cut down on some of this outrageous police behavior, where these guys, when they get busted for this stuff, they end up getting, time off, paid leave, administrative leave while they're being investigated, right? You want to start cutting back on this. Have the damages that are paid out to the victims of their malfeasance come out of their pension plan. Have the cops' pension plan start paying for some of these bad cops. Let's see maybe if that might change the attitude of some of the other cops to maybe violate that cross that thin blue line and start turning in the bad cops, knowing that it would cost all of them a little bit of their retirement for every bad cop that gets a judgment against them. Because if it's just the taxpayers paying off $195,000, what incentive is there? What punishment is there? What's going to change these cops from doing this again? Now, under the U.S. Code, he could actually sue the cops themselves if someone uses the color of law, their authority of a badge, to conduct an illegal search. So this is one of these cases, and This guy is just lucky that there was a videotape that contradicted these cops. Had this just been any other case without the backing and 5 cops all saying one thing and this guy saying another. And remember, they did find weed and mushrooms. And that's where it's always going to be tough for a defendant in that case, because there are people in this country who have this attitude that, well, he was doing something wrong. Even if the cops didn't do it the right way, they did catch a so-called bad guy, right? There's people that really have that attitude. But of course, the people that are involved in these cases that end up suing like this are the ones that got caught with something. The ones that didn't get caught with anything most likely wouldn't have been abused in the first place. This test-lying in this case is not rare. This happens all the time. And for 5 cops to conspire in a lie like this over something as little as finding personal use amounts of weed and mushrooms in a young man's duffel bag, imagine what they're willing to do in larger cases with greater odds, in larger cases with more on the line. And the brazen and calm way, the ease with which they get on the stand and regularly lie about these things. The Cook County, there is a Cook County in Oregon, by the way. Cook County public defender and former prosecutor Abishi Cunningham Jr. said, quote, "I've heard some police officers say in a social setting, if the defendant is going to lie to beat the case, why can't I lie too?" Former San Francisco Police Commissioner Peter Keene once said, quote, "Police perjury in court to justify illegal dope searches is commonplace," end quote. Houston civil and criminal attorney Annie Briscoe once said, quote, "When police lie to make a case on someone, they are saying the criminal justice system doesn't work, so I'm going to do it my way," end quote. And of course, a lot of this is incentivized by the war on drugs itself. When we're talking about cops going after rapists or murderers, violent people, this might be a place where there'd be a little moral leniency. Not that there should be, but there might be some moral leniency. But when we're talking about drug cases, we're talking about cops being incentivized to make these arrests. It's not usually the people that are consuming the marijuana or the mushrooms that are desperately calling the police trying to make it stop. These are all consensual crimes. These are all crimes that are being committed by people who want this product and want to sell it, want to buy it, want to use it. And we incentivize our cops by giving them these burn grants, these U.S. justice grants that give them more if they make more arrests, particularly the drug arrests. We create a system where pulling someone over on the pretext of a turn signal equals the possibility to inflate arrest stats to be able to have an easy day at work dealing with someone who's a cannabis consumer and not likely to cause much problems for the police in the process of the arrest or the prosecution or anything like that. We have a situation where these marijuana arrests also are incentivized through civil asset forfeiture by the cops being able to seize cash, to be able to seize cars and other personal belongings based on just the hunch that someone might have drugs on them. It's not a surprise to hear of this case coming out of Chicago, but it's happening all over America. It's happening all over in this war on drugs. We've got cops lying on the stand to try to bust people for doing something that's not harming anyone. And it just continues to erode our faith in our justice system, erode our relationship with law enforcement, and continue to turn us into an us versus them world. And I don't want it to be that way. I want to be able to respect our law enforcement. We've got to end the war on drugs for that to happen.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
All right, that sound means it's 4:20 back in my ancestral homeland, the Pacific time zone. Happy 4:20 to everyone back there in Portland, Oregon, and all along the West Coast. We're going to take a break, and then we've got our special State Senator Floyd Prozanski from the state of Oregon discussing the new laws and regulations on the Oregon cannabusiness industry and what the future holds when we come back.
Every strain, every sale, every medical study. Keep it right here on the Cannabis Radio Network.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less than those posed by legal drugs.
The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges.
Hey, Mo!
With over 6 years of experience in the industry, New Era CPAs is one of the nation's leading cannabis accounting firms, helping hundreds of growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies with their tax, legal, and business strategies. New Era CPA's offices cover the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego, and their skilled team is always available to help you take your business to the next level. Visit neweracpas.com for more info and set up a consultation. Welcome to the New Era.
Warning, hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that. This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. 23 and a half after the hour. And coming up, we've got State Senator Floyd Prozanski. He spoke at the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference this last Sunday. Great conference, took place in Eugene, Oregon. There have been a lot of law and regulatory changes that have happened in the short session. A lot of them that are affecting the marijuana industry. State Senator Prozanski has been a longtime supporter of marijuana reform, and we bring you this special extended bit with him.
So thank you all very much for allowing me to be here. Alex, as always, this is a great presentation opportunity to have everyone who believes in the issue who get together and actually see how we can move forward the cannabis industry here in Oregon and actually setting the landmarks, I believe, that will be going nationally, hopefully sooner than later. So what I want to do is what I've done in the past, and I think it's important for those who have not been familiar with how Oregon has in fact been a leader. We heard this morning about how we can actually and have set the pace. Think back in years as to what we've actually have accomplished in this state. Prior to me knowing it was Oregon versus Oregon, back in 1973, Oregon was the first state to decriminalize less than an ounce of marijuana. In 1998 is when Oregon voters passed Measure 67, which is the medical marijuana bill and program. This is one that I had the opportunity to get involved in as an advocate, as well as an advisor for on the technical side. At the time, I was working, I still am working as a prosecutor, but had just come out of the district attorney's office and was used as a conduit for what is the current law and how we could actually make certain when medical came on that we took and protected individual rights of patients. That same year, the voters of Oregon also rejected a measure that was referendumed by the voters, Measure 57. This law would have recriminalized marijuana where it had been decriminalized in 1973. And the voters in this state overwhelmingly, 2-1 or greater, said, no, we do not want it to be recriminalized. Now, the reason that you ask, why would someone want to go there? Well, in that time frame, the law enforcement wanted to have access to doing search warrants. And clearly, if you could actually get a search warrant on someone that had less than an ounce, you could see where that would go. Fortunately, the voters of this state understood that that was not the direction to go forward, and so that was knocked down. In 2009, we had the Oregon, we did reclassify marijuana from a Schedule 1. Now, I know our speaker that was talking about not wanting to go to a Schedule 2, but in the time frame of what we were attempting to do, I thought it was important for our medical patients to get as much protection as we can get. As you know, under the Schedule 1, whatever substances are there, they have been deemed not to have any medical attributes or have any worthiness to be used as medicine. I wanted to ensure that if we had a change in the law that was going to be adversarial toward the medical marijuana program in this state, that we gave the best protection we could against federal intervention by having our state said, no, we recognize after 10 years of the medical program that it was in fact and is in fact a medicine, and that we needed to protect our patients from being able to keep them being able to keep their medicine and not be, let's say, the downside from the federal government intervention. As has been mentioned, in 2013 is when the legislature did, in fact, pass the medical dispensary law, and this is where we start getting into some of the more difficult discussions that took place. And this is where I think we had some of the unfortunate outcomes that happened in the subsequent to that. But 2013 was a hallmark. Myself and Representative Peter Buckley were the co-sponsors of the bill that actually allowed for dispensaries to be set up in the state. And it was important because it provided for easier access for patients. As many of you know who serve as patients, they are not able to grow for themselves. And many of them not only can't afford the medicine, they needed also, some wanted and needed to have the ability to get it more readily, and that's what I believe the dispensaries have in fact provided for patients. But we have to keep in mind, as I just mentioned, and what we've heard earlier this morning, that we cannot believe and should not be led to believe that everyone who's using medical marijuana is in fact able to afford the cost of what it is at a dispensary. And this is one of the things I'll say for all of you who are growers, caregivers that are taking care of your patients, thank you very much. I understand what you have had to go through to actually try to make ends meet and being able to pay for the expenses that you need to pay for, but your heart is still there as to taking care of the patients, and I want to thank you for that opportunity. Please. Now in 2014 is when the voters did in fact pass Measure 91, which allowed for the recreational use of marijuana for adults 21 years and older. And at the same time, remember what Measure 91 said, do no harm to the medical program. Do no harm to the medical program. Now, what I will tell you, unfortunately, as you can see, and you know from what happened in 2015 with the legislation that was passed by the legislature to implement Measure 91, I believe there has in fact been harm committed against patients, and we need to try to override that, and we need to ensure that we do not have any more negative consequences for those who are needing medicine and not having the ability to actually, one, take care of themselves in that means, and also ensuring that they are not forgotten as we move forward with this new recreational model. So let me explain a little bit more as to how this is playing out. In Oregon, just like any other legislature, or in Salem, I should say, at any other capital in the country, there are times where legislation is being put together, and I believe some people in their heart really believe they're doing the right thing, even though you try to convince them that you could, in fact, have unintended consequences from the situations that we go forward. In 2015, we actually had a bill, House Bill 3400A. That was the bill that was passed regarding the overhaul and building the network for the recreational use of marijuana under Measure 91. And then House Bill 2041A also was another bill that was important to ensure that we had the two components sets that we needed to move forward. And making these bills and making some of the changes that were done, I would consider it somewhat sausage making. At the end, you have a lot of things being thrown into the pot, and then at that point, some stuff comes out as good, some stuff comes out as bad. I'll just use one example for you that I think is kind of denotes how this has worked out. Limiting taxing authority to the state legislature. That is a must. What we do not need and what we don't want to have is having local communities being able to run their own taxing scheme on these type of transactions. And the reason I say that, you just have to look at some of the communities of how they were receptive or not receptive to the decisions that were made by the voters to allow for recreational use of marijuana in this state. Fairview was one state that said we will be taxing, one city that said we will be taxing at 40%. 40%. Now, the goal that I've always had, and I believe many people that are in the movement have, is that we want to get rid of the drug cartels. We want to take this out of the black market. We want to legitimize it because that's where it should be. And we have seen already as to what type of impact it will have for revenue for the state to take care of bottled services in this state. But when you have a city that says that they're going to tax at 40%, another one saying, well, we're not even going to let it come in, how do you make that work? And so fortunately, we had cool minds and we agreed, just like we do with alcohol. Alcohol is taxed at the state level. The same thing with tobacco. There is some movement as to allowing for a little bit of transitions on the tobacco side, but in the marijuana side is being treated, and as we said, it should be treated just like alcohol in the way of how we tax it, and we should maintain control. Now, the question is, even though the state has the authority and has maintained and preserved it exclusively for the state to do, we do have some situations that don't make a lot of sense to me. When we start with retail sales next year, the tax will be 17% at the state. We will allow for cities or counties who have these facilities in their jurisdictions to be able to tack on an additional 3%. So throughout the discussions that we had in the legislative process, it was always my belief that we would have only 20% maximum. In other words, you would not have a city such as Eugene that allows for the industry to be here to have 3%, and then Lane County, which is the county that Eugene is in, to tack on another 3%. We wanted to keep it low, and the reason is we want to break the drug cartel hold and getting it where it's going to be more receptive for individuals to be buying over the counter than buying on the street corner. So by doing that, I felt really good that we had a break. I personally would like to have seen it less than 17% because I think we could do that. The numbers are showing us after 2 months where we thought, and it was forecast to have $3 million in taxes in the first year. We had that in the first month. January alone was $3 million. And then it's now the second set has come out and it's showing again another $3 million. So that's $6 million. It doesn't take much of a rocket scientist to figure out that this is something that's going to be good for our communities so long as we don't allow people to go crazy over the money grab that we have. But for whatever reason, the legislature was convinced through our modeling that was done for us that we should start the tax at 25%. So right now, for those in the industry that have dispensaries that are selling retail, you're charging 25%. So this is my forecast of what's going to happen. Come next January, you're going to see the tax from 25% drop back to 17% for the state, then optional another 3%, so that's 20%. So some people are going to say, wait a second, maybe the state should get a little bit more. You know, they're already paying 25%. So I will forecast that you're going to see, maybe not in 2017, but sometime shortly thereafter, a move by the state to try to up the tax to where it would be 22%, 3% for the on the local level, and then you'd be back at that 25%. I hope that you will tell your representatives and your senators, no, that is not what we need, because what we want to do is if we are serious about breaking the drug cartels, if we're serious about making this a legitimate business, we need to give every opportunity for those who have been on the outs, who want to come in, to be able to come in, and we need to ensure that those individuals that are buying legally are going to be buying at a lower cost than what it would be out on the streets. Now, regarding 2016, our legislative process now, we meet annually. We used to meet every other year, but fortunately, the voters in 2010 agreed that it was appropriate for this state to start meeting annually. We have the long session, the odd number of years. That's where we do our major policy work. Also set our budget for 2-year process. That's about a 5.5 month project or process that we go through. And then in the even number of years, such as this year, we had what I would refer to as our short session, a maximum of 35 days, and it basically starts the first Monday in February, and we went until, I believe it was March 3rd, about 3 days short of the 35 days. Within that time, you've heard speakers this morning talk about pushing out a lot of legislation. There were 6 bills that were passed that dealt directly on the marijuana issue. House Bill 4014 was an overhaul of the major bill that we did in 2015. Again, these are, as we've heard others say, this is a work in progress. It will be a work in progress into probably the next 5 to 6, maybe 7 or 8 years of us making the tweaks, making the adjustments. Just like any major legislation that's done in this state, you have to realize that you're not going to get it right the first time, so you need to be able to come back and make these changes. I'm very pleased to see and hear how well OLCC is working with the advocates. There was concern at the very beginning that OLCC may not be up to the task just because there was a lot of transition that took place and such. They have stepped up and they've been at the table. On the other hand, the Oregon Health Authority has been dragging and dragging and dragging. And I'm not sure why, because at one point they were a model for the medical program and how they were helping facilitate for medical need. But for whatever reason, you have to look at the director, because she's the one that sets the policies and the framework within that agency. For whatever reason, does not really believe in the concept that marijuana actually has medical properties. At least that's what I come away from, because I keep trying to work with their agency and making certain that we take care of patients, but it seems to me that they're looking at how we can put more obstacles in the way. So 4014 was a bill that took care of some of the changes that needed to be made after the major bill in 2015. House Bill 4094 is an interesting bill that we've done. This is another one that I think Oregon is trying to take the lead and show the federal government why they need to make changes in their current laws. This one actually allows for and gives certainty to those who are in the banking industry. If you are banking with legitimate businesses that are registered in this state to be doing medical marijuana programs or a recreational program, that you will not be faced with criminal charges at the state level. Now, why is that important? Well, I mean, if you're a banker, you want to make certain you're not going to be going to jail for the work that you do. Now, we've heard about the situations on tax relief as to being able to deduct your price of what you're going through in your business, what your costs are and how you can deduct it. Yes, you cannot do that at the federal level, but this bill, 4094, will in fact allow for businesses in Oregon to be able to make those deductions on their state taxes. Again, I think this is important for us and the other states that have gone down this road, Colorado, Washington State, Alaska now, and others that will be coming on through this next election cycle and in the general elections in November, to be leading the way so we can show the federal government what they should have been doing years ago. So the other bills that were passed during this session was Senate Bill 1524. This is one that allows for veterans who are under the OMP program to have an exemption as to their cost. And this, I'll go back a little bit over this, but it's going to limit their cost for their card to $20. Again, I think this is very important. Now, the issue when you look at some of the situations, we've heard Anthony Johnson bring this up, and I think it's very important. The way our system is set up now, because of a shortfall with the recession, there was an agreement, I believe it was back in 2009, that the legislature was going to allow for some of the money that was coming into the OMMP program to be used in other parts of the Oregon Health Authority to fund other programs that needed to have cash under this situation. I can tell you I attempted in this last short session to have that changed and actually had an amendment that was drafted that would have in fact said that come 2017, next year, that we would basically take that prohibition of having the money that's going into these programs that are non-OMMP related stopped. So this is something you need to be working on with your Congress, with your senator and your representative in the state. You need to make sure they understand that it's not fair to take millions of dollars out of the OMMP program and use it in other areas where it is not a OMMP program. The reason I say that is because we've heard that they want to increase the cost of a medical card, thinking, well, these people can just afford another $200, another $500 on top of what they're already paying. We need to get that message across that it's not fair, it's not right, again, to divert money that has been raised off of medical patients to go into other programs. Those are great programs, but we, the legislature, should be funding them through the general fund or through some other means and not on the back of medical patients. The other two bills I'll mention to you is 1598. This is a bill dealing with marijuana is now considered in this state an agricultural crop, which it should have always been. And this is an area that takes in, I think, more so of one of the things that I had the opportunity to be part of back in 2009, of being one of the chief sponsors of passing the industrial hemp legislation that allows for industrial hemp to be grown in this state. At the time when we passed it in 2009, because of the prohibitions at the federal level, we had to set it up where it was basically only going to be allowed once the federal government opened up the opportunity for industrial hemp on a more national level. But we've been given a benefit, and this is one of these wacky things, under the under the federal definition of marijuana. Industrial hemp is captured under that definition. It shouldn't be, but it is. But in this case, it worked out well because the Cole memo that you've heard about that came from the United States Department of Justice actually said certain things about what states could do if they had marijuana in their state and they were following certain parameters. Because of the definition tying in industrial hemp, it opened the door to allow for industrial hemp to start being grown in this state, and it has and it will continue to be so through the Department of Agriculture and sense of licensing and stuff. We have already had, I believe, 5 or 6 licenses in the last year that were issued for the last growth cycle, and I expect there's going to be more. As many of you know in this room, the CBD has now been attributed to industrial hemp, and so I think you're going to see a movement where those individuals who are growing industrial hemp are going to be wanting to get that into the medical programs. And the only thing that we said that needed to occur is that if it's going to be for human ingestion, it has to meet the same test that we have for any other product that's going to be for human ingestion. And so that is another one that I think is going to be a bright star for this state. And then the last bill that passed in 16 was 1601, and that dealt again with taxation issues, which was important to ensure that we made it as streamlined as possible. Now, what I want to go over a couple of things before we take some questions is that one of the other areas that we passed in 2014, this is, I think, something that is kind of correcting an injustice that has occurred. And that is basically taking penalties, criminal penalties that have been assessed against individuals in the war on drugs as it pertains to cannabis and have downgraded those levels of offenses. I will tell you we're not finished, but we've made headway on many of them. One of them I'll just give you as an example. Delivery within 1,000 feet of a school by a minor to another minor for no consideration. Would you believe that before that law changed, that was a Class A felony? Class A felony is the highest felony we have in the state. If you murder someone intentionally, that's a Class A felony. But so if you had two kids basically giving pot to each other within 1,000 feet of the school, that's what was there. So now we were able to drop that down to a misdemeanor as a Class A. So it gets it more in a balance and a perspective of what's more reasonable. Is it the best decision? No. But the reality is we need to take these incremental steps to get us down there. As much as I think most of you in this room would like to see this turn on and off like a switch and just make all these changes at once, we have a lot of people that need to be encouraged and empowered. And the way they're going to be empowered with people like you in this room, visiting them. And again, your representatives and your senators, as you've heard throughout this process, need to hear from you as their constituents and why these laws need to be updated and changed. Now, I'm going to kind of close with my remarks before I take questions and just tell you that a couple of things. Oregon has, in fact, been a leader in the evolution of cannabis in the United States. It has been and it will continue to be so. For us to do that, we need to consider what and how we make the mark and what's the model that we are going to be providing to other states, because I can tell you from my visits, and even in Colorado where they've been up and running for 2 years, they are still looking at Oregon because some of the stuff they did out of the gate wasn't right. They see how we've made those adjustments and they're now coming and making changes in their own state. So this is the point that I want to ensure that we walk away from this conference. Everyone who's here who wants to get in the business to make money, you will make money if you do it right. I ask you to stay with your heart and make certain that we take care of those who are going to be most adversely impacted, the medical patients, if we don't make certain that we keep the provisions that are in place that ensure that they have easy access and in some cases free access to medicine. And so as you are developing your business plans for your operations, I ask you to keep those things in your thoughts, ensuring that you are willing to give back to those who led the charge, for those who need to have the ability to get medicine, and that I think it's very, very important that we take care and provide for them. One of the things that will make us and set us apart from the other states, what I've heard from both in Washington State as well as from Colorado, is that we are looking at maintaining high standards and testing for remedial contaminants, looking what type of pesticides can be used in the production, ensuring that we can be, quote unquote, as organic as we can be, as that term is not defined under federal law, but what we can do when keeping it to the basics. We will set ourselves where we have already been branded having some of the best product coming out of the country, if not the world. We will be a leader in exporting this product once it goes national. So what I will say with that is that as much as you might want to make that first million 6 months ago, take a deep breath. It's going to happen. If you stay true to your beliefs and your philosophies and work with all of us to make certain we do the right thing for Oregon, you will prosper just like Oregon will. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes. Senator Floyd Prozanski, everybody, let him know. I really appreciate your words about eliminating the black market and protecting patients. That's very important. Thank you very much. Hold on. We have a question here.
This is probably more of a commentary than a question because there really isn't an answer. But are those counties and cities that are not allowing cannabis in their communities also allowed to use the state funding that the business is in?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way it was worked out and the way ballot measure 91 said during the first year, there was going to be this process that everyone gets to participate. And so that is what's happening this first year. After this, if a city or if a county chooses not to have those markets in their jurisdictions, they will not be receiving tax dollars.
Over here to your right. So I come from a little bit outside the cannabis industry, was invited in by some friends. And if there's one thing I've noticed is that it's really this sort of pie in the sky, make your millions beliefs. And I tell you, I've never invested more of my time and my money into getting something omet the ground. And I haven't met any more expert growers that had daytime jobs. So, when you think about all this tax revenue and the states want to bring it up and 40% and you can't take deductions, I mean, we are scraping by, and I've invested more in this than I have in anything else. You got to work your tail off. You got to be a great business person. You got to have great partners. And then you need some luck, too. Because, between the pests and everything else, there's a lot of opportunity for failure. So I would love anybody's thinking about investing or that you think about taking this stuff back to tax conversations. It just doesn't fall out of the sky, and the money doesn't grow on trees. You really got to work for it.
And that's very true as to the issues when you think about the tax dollars. I believe that's one of my concerns is that many of my colleagues who've been dragging their feet all of a sudden are going to see how many zeros are behind, and they're going to say, wait, we can actually make a lot of money. Well, it's a balancing for sure, and for yourself and for many in this room that have, it's a high risk. I mean, it's not as simple as just putting money down that you're going to be guaranteed that you're going to be successful. And so that's one of the things that I feel is very important for us at the state legislature to still maintain the control on a statewide basis to ensure that we make certain and we foster for small mom and pop businesses to be able to make it. One of my concerns, and I'll tell you, I mean, I'm going to out myself just like Matt says, I in 2015 wanted to see a residence requirement on the different licenses. There were a lot of people that came in after that bill passed and said, no, wait a second, it shouldn't be done. And so in this last year, we took it away. But I'm going to tell you why I think it should have stayed for one license, and that's the production side. And the reason I think it should have stayed in the production side is because we were told in 2015 that there was 3 to 5 times the amount of product being grown in the state that was necessary for filling both medical and recreational. If that is true, why would we want to bring in people from out of state that have mega bucks? And when I say mega bucks, I'm talking millions of dollars of capital to come in and basically take on the industry that's been here for 14 years. Now, what I will say, let me say this is the way I think that it should have worked. I didn't win the fight, by the battle. I made the fight, and it didn't happen. We could have had a vertical license for those who wanted to come in from out of state, allow them to grow production-wise for their own use in their own vertical system, where they would not be able to come in and then basically flood the market by selling all of their products across the board. They'd have to do it within their own license structure. And someone says to me, well, I don't know if that, if you're really concerned, if your concerns are really meritorious. Well, the day that we voted on the new bill in 2016 that modified 3400, I had received a call from a small brewery that's here in Eugene telling me that he and 4 other family businesses that are in a warehouse where he had a 10-year lease at 35 cents per square foot for brewing, that basically his landlord came in and said, I want to renegotiate that lease. I want you to pay me $1 a square foot 3 times what I already agreed for you to pay for 9 years. And if you don't, I've got an out-of-state investor who's going to come in and pay me that amount. So now I've got 4, if not 5, family businesses that they're not all, none of them are in the cannabis industry. They're going to be displaced because someone's coming in with the big bucks and they're undercutting. And you say, well, that's illegal. Well, it may be illegal. They may not be able to go through the bankruptcy and do that if you actually challenged it. But as his attorney told him, do you really want to put in the time, the money, only to have a disgruntled landlord for the next 9 years trying to service your place? So these are I consider somewhat unintended consequences. Clearly, the way we had this licensing set up, after 4 years, it would go away. 2 years, they'd be residential, and then they could do anything and everything. But it would be just a little slower process. And again, for me, no one should be trying to get in this to get rich quick. Let's move through this industry forward so it's going to stay in place. It's going to have the stability. And I felt that was going to be more transitional way of doing it. It didn't happen. So I will be working as I can within this confines that we have to do what's best for Oregonians.
All right. Thank you. We have time for one more.
My name is Melanie Davis, member of the media El Hispanic News PQ Monthly. I have a question regarding OLCC oversight and actually the opportunity that they actually haven't done a lot of communication with the disenfranchised communities who continue to be adversely affected, exactly, and for delivery of medicine. So who's overseeing OLCC when it comes to outreach and communication, particularly to disenfranchised communities?
Well, the oversight for all of the state agencies is, in fact, the legislature. So by you bringing these concerns to me, it's something I can bring up. I'm not sure if OLCC, if Will and them are still here, but I think that is really an excellent question. And if they are here, I would really encourage you to go talk to them directly on a one-on-one basis as to what you're seeing or not seeing and what you think needs to happen.
He's standing right here in the back, by the way.
Didn't hear that.
I said Will's right there in the back.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. So Will's in the back. I think that's a great conversation to have. I will say for OLCC, they are working their tails off. I've been, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, very pleased. We're at the very beginning. We were really concerned as to whether this was going to be an overload. With the lack of resources that they do have, I think they have done a wonderful job. And you heard on a panel earlier this morning how well they're working with advocates. And that's really what we want agencies to do. I just wish I could get the Oregon Health Authority to do the same thing.
Thank you very much, Senator Floyd Prozanski. Really appreciate you championing the cause and working for the people.
State Senator Floyd Prozanski has always been a great supporter of the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act, and now as marijuana legalization is taking root in the state of Oregon, he's a great supporter of that issue as well. That's about all the time we got for today's show. Thanks for joining us here live from South Carolina. For those listeners out there who said I had to get a hold of some barbecue before I left the state, that has been done. Pulled pork sandwiches and hot, spicy barbecue sauce happening right now. For everyone here for CannabisRadio.com live in South Carolina, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in Atlanta tomorrow all day long, and live from Little 5 Points, we'll bring you a special edition of the Russ Belville Show. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.